Tanner. Hello, this is Tanner Tech. And today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the old stereo in my Toyota Tacoma with this new stereo. Now the stereo that's currently inside here doesn't work too well. Even though it says it's 160 watts, it's not really. And the tape deck does not work at all. So the only thing that works on this is the AM and FM radio. But I would like to have some more uses for this thing, like hooking it up to my phone via Bluetooth. So that is why I bought this new stereo on eBay. Now this stereo was fairly cheap at only about $30, and it came within 2 days. So I'm going to show you how to install this. Let's get started. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is to pull off all the air conditioner knobs so that way you can take out the air conditioner plate. Make sure to put these in a safe spot. You can then use a screwdriver to pry out the air conditioner plate. Make sure to pull out the AC knob first. Now after you have pried off the air conditioner plate, it's time to remove the rest of the dash. You can remove the rest of the dash with a simple screwdriver just by pulling it off. Make sure to wiggle this as to not break the plastic pieces inside. You should then be able to remove the whole dash so you can see everything inside. Now it's time to remove the stereo. To remove the stereo, there's going to be a few screws inside. So you're going to want to take these screws and unscrew them, and so that way you can pull out the entire stereo. Make sure to keep these screws in a safe spot because you'll have to put them in. After all 4 screws have been removed, you can now pull out the old stereo. You should now see an empty place where you're going to put your new stereo. So this old stereo is inside this plastic harness that lets it fit inside the truck. So we need to take this stereo out of the harness so that way we can put the new stereo inside the harness. You can do this by removing the screws. You'll then need to bend these small metal leads backwards so that way this whole radio can slide out of its harness. This is the whole radio harness. Now it's time to insert the new metal connector that lets the radio interface with the harness into the harness. You can do this by merely sliding it in. It takes a little bit of wiggling to get it all the way in, but with a little work, you can get this thing in place very nicely. As you can see, the new metal piece is now secured inside the black harness. Now it's time to take these small little pins or little metal flaps and bend them upwards to keep the radio securely inside its harness, so it will never come out. Now I accomplished bending these flaps with a piece of needle nose pliers. You go in from the bottom and you push the flap in, so it's slightly pushed up, and you go on the top and finish by compressing it in place. Now make sure to do this with all 4 sides, so that way this metal piece is in place with the black piece and it will not come out. You can then reinstall the piece of plastic onto the harness with the screws. You should now be able to slide your new stereo into the harness using the new little metal piece. It should fit pretty good. Now it's time to do the wires. Now it's time to decode this rat's nest of wires to find out what wires go where when I'm splicing it onto my new stereo. This can be done with a multimeter, so I can find the different impedances, the different speakers in my car for these wires, and also so I can find the positive, negative, and ACC. Now you need to always make sure and pull the fuse before you start messing with wires so that way you don't blow it. Now from what I've figured with these wires is this yellow one goes to the memory B+, which means it's always on. This red one goes to ACC, which means there's only a 12 volt voltage on it when the key is in the ignition and it's set to battery. And black is of course ground. These other 4 wires go to the 2 front speakers. There are no back speakers in this truck. You can then hook up all the corresponding wires with wire nuts. Just twist the wires, cut off the top, and twist on the wire nut. Do this with all the connections that match. Now, after all of the wiring is in place and done, you can now put back the radio. So the first thing you'll need to do is put this harness back in. And you'll need to take the wires and push them all through the harness, because that's the only way you're going to give them access to your radio. This includes the actual antenna wire. You're then going to want to slide in the harness, so that way all the screws inside line up. Okay, now after the harness is in place, you can then put all the 4 screws back in, and then before you put the dash back on, you can plug in your stereo into the 2 plugs. That means the power and speaker cord and the antenna cord. You can then take everything and push it back into the crevice and slide the stereo in. You can then finish putting the dash back in and finish putting the air conditioner vent back together. After this is done, your new stereo should be successfully installed and ready to see if it works. So, let's give it a little test. I'll turn my key, press the power button, and there you go. The stereo works. So, as you can see, after it's been all installed, the stereo looks great. It fits perfectly inside my dash, and it's actually pretty loud. It has a bunch of different modes, from radio to auxiliary to USB and SD to Bluetooth, which is what I use most. So, that's how to install a new radio in your car. And stay tuned for my next video, where I will be showing you how to make a time machine.